Okay, everybody, this is my review of Season 4, Episode 2 of The Handmaid's Tale, Nightshade. This was written by Kira Schneider, who has written a couple episodes each season since Season 1, so she is no newbie to this. And this is directed by Colin Watkinson, who directed the first episode and is the main cinematographer on the show. As I always do, I'm going to split up my review. We're going to talk about June's plotline first, then we'll go to Canada, and we'll finish off with the Waterfords. So with June's plotline, it's still really tense, right? It opens up with these Guardians looking for the Guardian they just killed in episode 1. So June knows, again, what she always believed, they're not going to be able to rest, right? They already got to get out of there. They got to get on the move. So she's got to go to this other Mayday contact. So when she meets this contact in this greenhouse, it's at this new location that's like this country club version of Jezebels. And there's women being used as prostitutes. There's these greedy men from Gilead all around. And what's interesting about the dialogue with this contact from Mayday she meets in the greenhouse is that she also knows about June. So this word is just spreading more and more about the legacy of June. And she's even mentioning how it's inspired people to even blow up checkpoints, per se. So that's really cool. I like they're doing that. And it really just works well to kind of build up the world building and the lore of June as a character in the Handmaid's Tale world. Because we know they're going to make a show based off the newer book, The Testaments, which I read, which was really good. But you'll see they're just kind of planning out certain things that will matter way later. Because, again, they're planning to do so many seasons of this show and spin-offs. But you see that this contact says they can't get them out tonight. It would have to be tomorrow. So this is huge because we know how this episode ends and how the timing of this can make things more of a struggle for June. But what that sets up for this episode is that June's like, well, in the meantime, I'm going to help these women here in this country club. And what she shows this Mayday contact is that, you know, Mayday isn't an army. It's not just going to come and liberate a city, right? You have to get rid of that expectation. June's learned that, and that you got to do things for yourself. And they plant that seed here in the greenhouse, no pun intended, and it gets its payoff later on. And what I've been really digging about this season is we're getting a lot of seeds planted in episodes and paid off by the end of the episode, which I really appreciate to keep you patient for the bigger payoffs that go on the whole season arc. And we're going to see that again, right? Where we get this reveal, which I talked about in episode 1, where Mrs. Keyes, you're wondering what's going on with Mr. Keyes, that he's out of it. We learn Mrs. Keyes has been poisoning him slowly. But what I'm talking about with a seed planted here is when June's talking to Mrs. Keyes, there's some really good dialogue. And she's talking about, I think there are good men everywhere, even in Gilead. It's just really hard to be good in Gilead. And she's telling this to Mrs. Keyes, who is saying she doesn't believe in good men anymore because of this commander who's not a good person. Why I love this line by June is it's kind of just setting you up in your mind to kind of question what June and Miss Keyes are talking about, and is there any good men in Gilead? And it's giving you that payoff because of this guardian that is with June this whole episode, that by the end, you know, he stands to stay with her and not leave her, and he gets killed for it. And it also, I believe, is kind of setting up to this character of Nick that we've known from the beginning, and how good is Nick at the end of the day, and the mystery about Nick and where he is now. But before we get into that crazy end with June, let's go now. June brings this poison to the country club, and like I said, we're getting our payoff now where she's telling this contact, look, you gotta take initiative here and do things for yourself. Gives her the poison to put in the vodka and in the tea for that aunt. And it's a cool way to show them kind of take care of Gilead in a fresh way, where we're seeing these guys partying and they're taking shots of poison, not even realizing. It's a pretty awesome sequence, to be honest. I enjoyed it. But you get this big victory, and it's turned around by this amazing sequence that ends the episode with June and this guardian showing up to the farm, and something feels off right away. Your heart is just pounding. What they brilliantly do is they pump in heart pounding sound in the background to even amp it up more. And like I said, this guardian doesn't leave her side. He says, I'm staying with you. Again, just reminding the audience too that there are some good men here. It gives some hope in that angle of it. And when he gets shot by a sniper, that scared the crap out of me. They timed it perfectly here to get you on the edge and then just shocked by it. And it's just crazy tension where these snipers are on June and Nick appears, and we get this crazy reunion of Nick and June because it's such a complicated relationship they have had going this whole show. It's one of the strengths of the show. It's happy to see them back together, but it's in such an odd circumstance because June is captured here, but he does say to her, I'll try to keep you alive. But I'm not going to speculate here. Episode 3 is already out. So let's just watch episode 3 and then talk about in my episode 3 review about what's going on here at Nick. But again, awesome cliffhanger for the episode. It's one of the most exciting scenes I can remember in recent time for Handmaid's Tale. I really, really enjoyed it. And you're worried already, you're like, what's going on with Alma and Janine and Mrs. Keys? So it adds that mystery to it, which is exciting. So let's now shift gears to the Canada storyline that is with our protagonists in Luke, Moira, Rita, and Emily. Now, I've been hard on the Canada storyline in past seasons, and I've always said it's the slowest part of the show. It is still the slowest part of the show, but on second watch this episode, I actually really dug this story, in particular with Moira. But before it even delves too much into Moira, I like also seeing Rita now, because Rita being in Canada is interesting because she's had the most longing effects of Gilead. She's been at Gilead the longest, and now she's really more of a fish out of water here. And they tie that well because everyone on this plane is, like, all of these kids, and it goes into something that's very realistic of how this would happen if this really happened in real life, where you can't just have kids raised in the world they know, now just blend into a different society. It's not going to be a smooth transition. And they also do a great job of leaning into survivor's guilt now and really making our characters face that. And Rita's still got that Gilead in her because she's like, I thank God I'm here every day. I pray for June every day. She's still talking a little bit that way, in a religious state. And that's what I love about Moira. She's like, I'd pray for Gilead, which was a great transition into June's scenes. But before we get even into the Moira and Emily plotline here, the big criticism I do have about this episode, it's very few criticisms, but this one stuck out to me, was that I did not like how they paced this episode and edited it, where you had June's really interesting main plot, but when you would go to Canada, and then it would go to the other side of Canada with the Waterfords, they would plot it out. You see this at 18 minutes in the episode, and you'll see it at 29 minutes in the episode, where it's right in the middle of the patch. To really slow the pace, which I didn't like, was that they would play those storylines back to back and then go to June, where I think it would just been smoother if the whole episode they were going June, then Moira, then June, or vice versa, but not putting the B and C plot next to each other. It's too much slowness to really take away from the excitement of the main plot. And that's a struggle all movies and shows have, where anytime you're leaving your main protagonist, which is June, the main storyline, you got to make sure it's really interesting in these other plots so people don't get antsy to get back to where they really want to be and keep those things interesting, which I think they were interesting on their own, but to have those side plots play back to back was just too long, and it made them feel slower. But back to what we're talking about now in this storyline, right? We see Moira has this new chick she's into, and of course there's a reason Emily's there in that scene seeing that. It's planning, just speculation. It's a fan thing that people want, where Emily and Moira would get together. That's the characters we know and love, right? So of course you're rooting for that. So I thought it was interesting she was the one to see that, because that could definitely be a possibility down the road. But what I really did like was Moira here with this child of Asher who's getting adopted, right? And it hits a lot of things. What it really did well with Moira's character is it really delved into her struggle of taking on instant parenthood, which she's actually relating to this woman who's adopting Asher. But what it's also doing is showing you an example of how a kid's not going to adapt well to this life that we know is normal, but to them it's foreign. Like, this kid doesn't even like pizza, which is insane, right? He misses his Martha. He misses his room. He misses his mom and dad. He misses the food from Gilead. But you see how the mother adopting him is just frustrated. And Moira's already learning. She's like, you got to just let him feel these things. You can't keep correcting him. And we get this little thing, which is pretty crazy, where she named the kid, she's trying to call him James, named after her brother, who is the actual father of this kid. So obviously we can assume he's clearly dead, and that she's taking on her nephew here. And we get this good scene with Emily and Moira now, where they're talking about, like, hey, June didn't think this through, or these kids ripped from their families, the only lives they knew wouldn't adapt well, and this would be chaos. And we get more into Moira saying, I love Nicole, but I never wanted to be a mom. And Emily says, why do you feel like you have to clean up June's mess? And she says this great line, I'm making up for when I got out and she didn't, I guess. But I'm tired of feeling guilty. So this is really good. It gets us into a character we love that really hasn't got enough screen time, and we haven't really got enough into her head in Moira. And why she's a great character is she's from the beginning with June, and she had a completely different experience than June now, getting out so early. But it goes into that survivor guilt that I think is really interesting, and how you adapt your life to it, and where's the line of doing all these things out of guilt where you also need to take care of yourself. It really just feels realistic in how this would go down in real life. And come on, I mean, Samira Wiley is an incredible actress. Every time I watch a show, I'm like, man, how is she not even a bigger star and getting bigger roles? I think she deserves to be a huge star because she can make one scene 10 times better just with her skills and just what she gives off. But Moira has this genius idea to bring Rita over, and it shows a genius idea by the writers here and how to use Rita as a character and interesting in this Canada story that's usually been kind of slow. But you're like, okay, she's that taste of Gilead these kids are going to need now to transition. It's a perfect role for Rita as she's trying to transition herself. And there's some subtle humor here I love where she gives the kid this wooden elephant to play with, and the kid's all excited, and Moira's like, what? Like, she's used to kids being excited playing with, like, video games. And the kid's excited for Rita to make food that was like in Gilead. It's just kind of funny in a way, which I like. There's, like, a little humor in a very serious show. So now let's shift over to the Waterfords, okay? So a lot of stuff's going on here in plot progression for the Waterfords. Some big stuff. So we see Serena's having a full physical evaluation, and they're basically giving her an out here. Like, Mark is always trying to give Serena a door to her getting redemption, and she's not taking it. And that's Serena we know. That's the Serena we know. We love. We've been with this character from the top where you love her, then you hate her, then you love her, and you hate her, and she just won't make that full redemption arc happen. She's very complicated, and continues to be the most interesting character to me on the show. But you see, she's got her missing finger from Fred. She's gotten her different forms of abuse, that obviously he's having sex with other women, that she could have STDs, and they talk about when he struck her. And they're like, oh, is this another appropriate punishment? And she's like, it's not that simple. You get that famous shot Handmaids loves where it's like that out of focus close up showing the anxiety Serena feels, even that mentioned. But we see Mark's like, look, I can get you immunity here. You get Nicole back, coming out as a victim here towards Fred. Do the right thing. It's a path for her. He's constantly giving her second chances. But she's like, it wasn't abuse. Not exactly. He acted out of anger and he probably regrets it. And he's like, why do you keep giving him the benefit of the doubt? And I like they threw this line where she's like, because I knew him before Gilead. So it gets us more into Serena's justification. What is the thing she's constantly giving Fred passes in her head of how he treats her? It's she's holding on to the old Fred that she married and fell in love with, and that was with her during the time of her starting Gilead. And she's created this monster and brought the worst out in Fred. And there's some spellbinding cinematography here, which is expected with this show, but I love that when Serena was talking to Mark in the scene, you see somehow they got the rain only on one side for a bit with Serena, and there's this light pounding on Mark, and it's like you just see she could just go over there with Mark, find that light that he's giving her constantly to go to, but she stays in the dark world she kind of has created. So then we get this scene where Serena wants to see Fred. They're in this small chapel, and I love how they set the setting in the small chapel, and Fred's talking about how he doesn't like that about this place, that they make God small like that, like the small chapel like they remember in airports, and not how Gilead makes that the big thing. And he's like, Serena, you're willing to expose details of our life and our faith to strangers? And he's like, you used to be so good at getting me to do what you want, but my eyes are open now. And she's like, Fred, please, I just want my daughter back. And he's like, look, she's just as much as my daughter too, and I'm not going to let you just get her and walk free. Fred says this line, you made us this way. But she says, you never stood up for me once you got a taste of power. I thought it was my fault, that I deserved everything you did to me. They're both right here. Like, they're both saying truth to each other. Like, pointing out each other's flaws. That, yeah, Serena is the mastermind behind this and really did bring out the worst in both of them. But Fred was the one who decided to take it to the next level and forget about Serena, really, and got power hungry and started treating her awful. So they both are saying things that are correct. But he says, I think I gave you too much freedom. So this is where Serena's realizing he is really long gone. She has to let go of that Fred prior to Gilead. And you see, she runs to Mark's like, I need to separate my interest from Fred. I'm done with him. But this doesn't matter at the moment because we get this big reveal from Mark that she's pregnant. Now I'm going to give a shout out to the Handmaid's Tale fans and Reddit and the community, because that's what I love about shows now where people can really catch symbolism and hints towards things. And when season 3 episode 11 came out, remember on their way to the border, Serena and Fred, they had this really kind of romantic moment where they're at this house on the way there, they're reconnecting, and they're laying in those separate beds near each other. But someone pointed out on Reddit this picture here where you see it's all imagery of the womb here, with the lamp between the two beds. So that was your hint that Serena was pregnant. So nice catch by that person, they called it. But it's a huge cliffhanger as well in its own way for this episode. So I really like this episode, left two exciting cliffhangers with this big reveal. And I think that we got some really good character study of Moira, but also interesting how they're handling the kids with Rita. My only complaint in this episode, like I said, is the decision to have both Candace stories back to back twice in this episode, where they should have spread it out more in between the main plot with June, maybe even save some of the scenes for the next episode. But I dug it. I really enjoyed it more in my second viewing. The first time it did feel really slow, but I really liked it. Again, on rewatch, I suggest rewatching this one again. I think I like it more. I'm going to give this one an 8.8. I'm excited for the next episode, knowing it is written by Bruce Miller and directed by Elisabeth Moss June herself. So I'm excited to see what she's got in that territory. That review is out now. You can check it out after you watch episode 3, and I'll talk all about it. So please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss one of my reviews of Handmaid's Tale. I'll be reviewing every episode, so you don't want to miss that. Please follow me at Steve Varley Show on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And if you really like what I do here, I appreciate a commitment to a $2 monthly donation so I can do more videos for you guys, cover more shows. It will really help me to live the dream of doing this full time one day for you. And like I said, it helps me so much if you could just subscribe to the channel. You have no idea how many doors it opens up for me, so I really appreciate it. And I'll see you next time.